Welcome to the Environmental Transformation Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Grady, and today's guests are Andrew Morris. He's one of the regional sales reps for E-Tank, and Jesse Green. He is also one of the senior application engineers, and we are going to talk about water filtration and equipment selection. Hey, guys, welcome to the show.
Sean, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. First off, one of the things that most of the ET Nation that's listening might know is E-Tank has been a huge supporter of the podcast. We can't thank you guys enough for being the sponsor and helping us get the message out and creating this platform for everybody. So we're always excited to bring you guys on so you can kind of talk a little bit about, what you guys do in this industry and the value you bring to your customers. And so before we get into it, hey, tell us a little bit about E-Tank, and what you guys do, because some of the listeners may not know what you guys do.
Sure. So been around 26 years now. Got started really providing rental frac tanks to environmental contractors, environmental customers. Our founder has experience in oil and gas, but he saw the need for that type of equipment in the environmental world. So he's opened up E-Tank, and we've grown from there. So added roll-off capabilities, which include vacuum boxes, added pumps and filtration equipment in the last 10 years. So really just grown inventory-wise, product-wise, as well as geographically. So from starting in Northeast Ohio 26 years ago, we now have 9 locations from Buffalo over to Kansas City and then down into Middle Tennessee and Kentucky.
Wow. Okay. So you guys have been growing. I mean, that's a pretty good stretch of the US that you guys are covering. I mean, where would you not be able to like support if, someone called you? Is there certain kind of like limits?
Yes and no. We'll go anywhere. It just might not be financially feasible, right? So you get, west of the Rockies, probably not going to be able to help out there right now. You get down into the south, southeast, depending on where the south. So Florida, Georgia, maybe not so much. We've had equipment out in New England. We've had equipment in Wyoming, down in Alabama. So we get to a lot of places because we're a trusted provider for a lot of our customers.
Gotcha. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, let's talk about E-Tank's water filtration capabilities. That's kind of I think the theme of today's conversation. What types of system are you guys offering, and what types of water are you guys processing?
Sure. I'll touch base on what we're doing, and Jesse, he's really the brains, the designer of these systems. But a lot of our customers will do construction dewatering. So sometimes filtration is as simple as, hey, we need to pull out this dewater an excavation. We're discharging on site, but we have to get rid of the suspended solids. So that's a very simple bag filters, cartridge filters, whatever we need to get to in that regard. But we also do contaminant filtration. So working with environmental contractors, environmental consultants, removing PCBs, PFAS, PFOAs, heavy metals, chlorinated solvents. Pretty much, if it can be contaminated in water, we probably have a media that can help remove it and get it down to an on-site discharge allowable limit.
Wow. Okay. And then talk a little more, Jesse, about how you're putting these systems together.
Yeah. So, to kind of compound on what Andrew's saying there. So dewatering, brownfield sites, total remediation, anywhere we can be found. When you're talking about filtration, you start out with solid separation, then into dissolved contaminants. We also do colloidal solids. So that's, really, really small. You couldn't catch it with a bag. Introduce biopolymers to create coagulation, flocculation, things like that, just to increase the speed of the settling time. So we do all types of systems, and there's times when everything is incorporated. So you might have a system that pulls from a tank or a source, whatever it is, goes into a bag filter with 25 micron bags or something like that. Sizing anywhere from a single bag all the way up to a 23 bag and anything in between. Then you go through your medias. So that might be carbon, organoclay, or specialty blends that are specifically targeting a certain contaminant, such as you're shooting for mercury, so you need to bring in a modified earth blend, or arsenic or something like that, right? After that, we typically go through a cartridge filter. This is something that not a whole lot of companies do, but we do it mostly as a safeguard, so that if there is any sort of, let's say, carbon dust that's really, really small that's going to pass through the system,
Right.
it's already soaked up that contamination. So we want to catch that too before you hit that discharge. So that goes on the end, flow meter so that you're actually able to charge the right amount, and so that your system's designed for the correct rate, then to your discharge. So that's kind of a typical setup. But there's times when we might add a biopolymer in front or something like that, just to kind of help get things going.
Well, so let's talk a little bit about maybe some of the types of projects you're deploying your solutions with. I mean, we touched a little bit about, maybe contaminated sites, or, removing some, water from, streams or whatever. But like, give us some real life examples of some of the projects you've worked on that you've had some success, deploying a filtration system, and how it really helped the customer.
Sure. So I cover Indiana and Southwest Ohio, so I can speak to some of the projects, obviously, in my area pretty well. So one area mentioned construction was in Indianapolis, at the Justice Center, where they're obviously building a new Justice Center, courts, etc. But they were having to pour a new footer for the new building, and there was a lot of groundwater infiltration. Customer needed us to get the groundwater removed from the excavation, and then the sediment removed from that water, so they could do a direct discharge on site instead of hauling it off with vac trucks, because there was really nothing wrong with the water except for the sediment. So what we were able to do was use a 6-inch vac assist pump. So it's a dry prime pump. It's almost foolproof for people to use. We're able to pump that water from the excavation into 2 frac tanks that were in series, and they were in series so that gravity could do a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting on some of the bigger solids. Would drop out between those 2 tanks. And then on the back end of that second tank, we had another 6-inch pump that would run through a pair of 6-bag filters, getting down to, I think it was 25 micron was what was required for them to do a direct discharge. Everything went really well. We had float controls on the pumps. They could run. We had day tanks, which basically added fuel cells to the pumps. The pumps can run autonomously once they're fired up, plumbed into the day tank and having the float controls. So not a whole lot of babysitting on a system like that. Customer was able to do what they needed to do on the construction side while also getting all that water out of there.
Well, you kind of touched on a little bit of, like, setting up a system and letting it run and do its thing. But do you guys have like digital technologies associated with these pumps where you can manage the flow rate or the pumping speed or something, remotely? You don't really need to be physically on site all the time. Is there anything like, from an IoT perspective that, you deploy with these pump systems?
I can touch on that. Yeah. So just about every pump in our fleet is capable of telematics. So with that being said, especially with these types of pumps, the vac assist, dry primes, it doesn't hurt to turn them on, turn them off, let it run dry, whatever you want to do. But we can set them up typically paired with a transducer that is flipping the pump on and off. It also can send alerts. So that's really nice. So for a 24-hour operation, we may not have guys on site, or maybe they're on site, they're just not near the pump. But it might say, hey, your water level's supposed to be at 6 feet, and it's at 8 feet now. It shoots off a text, phone call, or an email. And you can do all kinds of things with this. You can be measuring vibration on the pump. You can be measuring heat source on the pump. It's a little hotter. And you can also compare it to other types of pumps in that fleet, in our fleet. So this certain 6-inch pump might have a little bit more vibration. Okay. Normally that doesn't matter, but now we're starting to recognize that this pump might be having some issues. Let's go ahead and replace it and figure out what's going on. The other neat thing is there is a web interface. So if for some reason somebody wants to visually see that from their computer and actually see exactly what RPMs it's at or where that transducer level's at, they can see it.
Wow, that's pretty good. So you do have the ability to have some analytics behind setting up the pumps and have some visualizations for the customer to see what's really going on, or just you guys as the operator see what's going on. I mean, that's pretty next level, don't you think? I mean, how many other companies are doing that level of managing their pump systems?
Yeah, it for sure helps to mitigate some risk for us. So it's nice to be able to see all of those little things. I mean, you flip on a pump, you're not going to know, oh man, this is vibrating a eighth of an inch more or something, you know what I mean? And so it's measuring all of this stuff. So we're starting to know when problems are going to arise, and that's just guaranteeing that our equipment's at top notch before it goes out.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I like that. So you touched a little bit, Andrew, about your customer profile, but let's dig in a little deeper on that. I mean, who are your ideal customers for, e-tank? Like you guys got pumps, you got tanks, you got other services. I mean, who's your target audience, and how are you, driving business?
The target audience can vary, right? So there's a lot of different industries out there that can use our equipment. Obviously, oil and gas. That's where frac tanks. That's where they got their name. So that's a big one in certain parts of the country, not necessarily in Indiana per se, but you got pipeline contractors, pipeline owners for natural gas pipeline. When they have to do hydrostatic testing, they can use our tanks and pumps for that. Industrial maintenance contractors are arguably our biggest customer if you do by percentage of revenue and classification of customers. So industrial maintenance contractors are big. Emergency spill responders are very big. Everyone obviously saw the train derailment in East Palestine back in February. Yeah. Tragic event. The emergency responders out there were calling on us. We are the primary provider of frac tanks and pumps up to a certain point when we said, "Hey guys, we can't get you anymore because we got to be able to cover our other customers as well." So it was great that we were a trusted provider for those spill contractors. Environmental consultants, they can use our equipment if they're speccing out they need to do some groundwater filtration, or if they're digging, some contaminated soil. All of our roll-off boxes are rated for hazmat material, which separates us from like a landfill box. Nothing wrong with landfill boxes, but if you have contaminated media, you can put it in ours. It's fine in there. So I know we're talking about some of the projects we've used, but we got a second. Love to touch on also the contaminant filtration.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about. I mean, one of the big questions I have, and I think industry wants to know, is can you help them treat PFAS water? I mean, that's going to be such a big, I think, issue for clients of yours, customers, clients of consultants and everybody else, right? How do we treat how the wastewater facilities or drinking water facilities, are they going to meet these new proposed levels? What are you doing in that space?
Sure. So we have some PFAS projects going on right now. Not for me, I don't have them at a wastewater treatment plant, but I do have them on site at an Air Force base where they have firefighter training, obviously PFAS in firefighting foam.
Yep.
So this detention pond where the water, as part of the training, everything goes there, so it's not getting off site. It has to be managed, and the PFAS has to be reduced to a certain level before the city wastewater treatment plant will accept it. So we're able to do an on-site filtration trailer system for this. And like I said, Jesse's kind of the brains, but he can talk about the media we use and why we use that media.
Yeah, I mean, because that's got to be a pretty complex, process to make sure you have the right media to filter out the PFAS, since it's got to be such a low concentration.
Yeah, so we attack it with two different beds. So we start out with a specific PFAS targeted organoclay, and we follow that with a coal activated carbon rather than your typical coconut react. So what actually is happening there is you're creating a larger pore space. So when you think of PFAS, everyone always says the forever chemical or forever contaminant, right? It takes forever to break down. And that's because you have these massive chains of fluoride in there. And so what ends up happening if you just throw it at your typical 830 carbon mesh, you start to bog off that carbon really quickly. You're not using the full capacity of the carbon because it's just so massive, it's blocking it off. So what we're trying to do is open up the capacity, the interior space, so that you're getting a lot more efficiency. Could you use just regular carbon? Sure. You're just going to use a ton of it, way more than you actually need to. And so that's why we use that system. So you get a little bit of variability using both organoclay and carbon, but you're also getting that larger pore space.
Well, so it's like a little 1-2 punch, so to speak, to, kind of, instead of just hitting it with a big dose of carbon, let's knock it down first before we hit with the carbon. Because I think, I don't know, is carbon more expensive than the organoclay?
No, not necessarily. So you typically are going to be paying by the pound on one of those. Organoclay is denser, so
okay,
you can fit more in a vessel. So it will appear that organoclay is more expensive because of that. But when you're looking at the lifetime of a project, it's going to be a lot better to go with a more specified media because you're looking at efficiency. So most contaminants you can throw carbon at, and it's going to soak it up. But when you do that, for instance, let's say you throw carbon at a mercury project that might also have BTEX or something, right?
Yeah.
Then what's going to happen is it's going to, those early stages of the project, it's going to soak all of that up. You're going to see carbon BTEX, it's gone, non-detect. And then at some point, you're going to start seeing this mercury just sloughing off the carbon. And what's happening is the BTEX and mercury is still coming in at the same level, but the mercury bond is a lot weaker than the BTEX. So the carbon starts to drop off that mercury and suck the BTEX. So at this point now, instead of having lower levels of mercury, you're actually seeing an increase in mercury from your influent to your effluent. It's sloughing it off because it wasn't an efficient design. Yeah. And so that's what we're always trying to do is put together projects that are the most efficient for that project. Now, if you're looking at 10,000 gallons, maybe we're going to go with a more economical solution, just, to make it cheaper on the customer. But when we get into these projects where they're treating 60, 70 million gallons, okay, we're really, really trying to look at efficiency.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I got to imagine, designing for a real long-term project is a lot more complicated than just, showing up, throwing some pumps and some filters on just to get something temporarily, cleaned up, so maybe talk a little bit about your engineering design services, Jesse, and how does that help the customer and E-Tank solve the, challenging filtration projects? And what are you doing in that process?
Yeah. So that's really it. It comes into play on multiple facets of what we do. With E-Tank, there's kind of really three main sectors. So you're looking at fluid storage, so tanks, boxes, things of that nature, fluid movement, pumps, and then filtration. So those are our three main sectors. So especially when you get into pumps and filtration, we're going to have a lot of questions. And so sometimes that's not fun for the outside sales guys, but we really like to jump in and find out exactly what's going on with every single job. So there might be a lot of communication back and forth, but the reason is what we're trying to do is give you, for instance, if it's a pump, we're going to ask you everything about the job. Where's the pump sitting? How high are we pulling it? How far are we pushing it? What are all of your connection points? Everything like that. So that one, when we show up, we have everything we need. But two, we want to supply the most economical option for the job, that's also going to work. So if we can use a 4-inch pump, but maybe a 3-inch pump is cheaper, let's go with the 3-inch pump if it works, right? So that's kind of, we don't want to oversize just to charge more money, right? We're always trying to go for the economic option. And that kind of goes the same way with filtration, where if we can, like I said, we're going to go with the economic carbon outfit for some of these small, volume projects. But once we get into the larger volume, we're really looking at efficiency. Maybe this is a 2-year project. We're expecting to do rebeds every 6 months or 3 months, whatever it is. But if we did just throw one specific media at it, maybe you're rebedding every 2 weeks. And you rebed every 2 weeks over the lifetime of a 2-year project. That's a lot of money. So bear with us as we're asking a lot of these questions in the initial setup. But just know it's really going to help out in the long term.
So when maybe you've got a more complex remediation type project that comes in, and the consultant's leaning a little bit on E-Tank to help them understand, how do we scale the proper, system for the design of what we're doing? I mean, do you guys do any bench scale studies or testing to really see if the design that, could most effectively, treat or process address the contaminant concern? Do you do any of that kind of work? Because I got to imagine that might be beneficial for a project we have a little more time to assess, but, not just quickly, get something out.
Yeah. So in a filtration setup, typically our best option is if we can get an analytical. That's going to give us all the information. But what another nice thing that we have is our lab here in our water quality lab. It's here in headquarters in Massillon. And so what we can do there is we typically would want at least 1 gallon, and our client can send that in. And then any type of filtration that we do in the field, we can mimic here in the lab. So if that's throwing it through bag filters, cartridges, whatever, or using a sand filter or even your medias, we would then do all of the lab testing here. And from there, if you just need a visual representation, sure, we'll send it back, or we can send it off to get tested. And so the nice thing there is, we can tell you all day that your system's going to work. But with this setup, we can give you hard proof that it does work,
right?
Because we just mimicked it. So that's a nice way to go.
Yeah, more certainty on the design, the deployment of the solution. That's good. Andrew, what are some of the key differentiators that customers appreciate about E-Tank? There's a lot of competitors in the market, but let's talk a little bit what differentiates you or separates you guys from the others.
Sure. I think first and foremost, that goes back to day one of E-Tank, is our tanks are certified clean. And that's not to say our competitors have dirty tanks, but we're the only ones that have empirical evidence that our tanks are clean. And what that means for us is we know what a customer put into a tank, right? Like, hey, this was used at a gas station site, so it's going to be petroleum impacted water. We ask the customer, hey, did you guys clean this out? Are we doing some of the cleaning? And based on that information, we'll do some additional cleaning, but we always take a sample. We'll do a final rinse, get a sample, take it into the lab, check for any contaminants that may have been in the tank from that previous job. Sometimes it's just, hey, we use city water because we had to use an injection. Well, don't really have to test for anything there because we've already tested and know that the material or that the tank is clean. So that day one, certified clean frac tanks. You don't want to go through the cost of doing a big filtration system just to put the material, the post-treat or the post-filter water into a dirty tank. So got peace of mind knowing that the tanks we send you don't have any contamination from another site. But it's also peace of mind knowing that any contamination you had isn't going to someone else's job site. So that's first and foremost our bread and butter from day one. As far as our pumps and all of our equipment, Jesse was talking about the telemetry on being able to check vibrations on pumps, but we also have diagnostic stations at each one of our operation facilities that we can hook our pumps up to. And we are more stringent when we test those pumps than the manufacturer, so that we know that the pump is operating to the manufacturer specification. And our margin of error is more strict than the manufacturer. So even when we're back at our facility, we know that when we send something back out, it's going to work. Includes our tanks and boxes too. We're doing multi-point inspections, making sure gaskets are good, valves are good. Are all the pieces there, for roll-off boxes, something as simple as that have tarps on them. They've got bows that the tarps, are they bent? Are they missing? We want to make sure that the equipment gets out to the job site and is ready to use.
And you guys can also haul, waste containers to, waste facilities if you need to. Are you hazmat licensed to do that?
No. And the reason we don't is we don't want to compete with our customers, right? So we can provide the roll-off box. We can provide you with a lot of potential leads. If you're not someone that hauls waste, if you're not in the waste business and you just need help hauling material, we're going to give you some names. And if it is if you're just trying to keep it one point of contact and would like us to do it, sure, we can do that. We've got a lot of good relationships with subcontractors that can do that. But up front, we're trying to take care of the customer and let them kind of manage the material on their own, but point them in the right direction when they need it.
So when waste goes off, they just need to make sure that they can return the box to you guys. They were at the project site or to your facility or something like that, right?
Yep. And it's easy for me to relate to the waste side because of my background, right? So before I came to E-Tank, I worked in the waste industry, turnkey waste transportation and disposal, and some also industrial maintenance, industrial cleaning services for 7 years before joining E-Tank. So speaking about RCRA and DOT, that's very easy for me to understand what the customer's talking about.
That's great. That's good. Well, I wanted to kind of circle back a bit on, the filter media you guys use for chemical treatment and contaminants. What's like your main go-to? We talked to organoclay and colloidal. I mean, is there certain vendors you're sourcing this from, or are you guys working with a bunch of different sources? I mean, how does that work for you guys? How do you choose it?
So when you're looking at medias, you're talking typically carbon and organoclay. Between those two, you're covering 99.9% of contaminants. We actually, one of our most used medias supplied by our vendor Hydrosil is Organo Blend. And what it is a 50-50 mixture of organoclay and React. And so with that, it's a heavy hitter with a lot of variability. But then from there's 20 different medias that we're looking at that are specified to specific contaminants. And like I said, arsenic, fluoride, mercury, lead, whatever it is, there's always something. It's just that there's certain times where maybe that's a bit overkill.
Yeah, right. Do you get involved with the actual filtration selection for various types of chemical in a design service aspect of it, or do you get basically direction from your consultants who are saying, I want this?
Yeah. So now that's not too often. Now there are times whenever we have clients that say, hey, I need 2,000 pounds of carbon, and we'll always supply whatever they need, of course, and whatever they want. But if it's more efficient for them to use a different media, we're going to offer it, and based on whatever it is. The other nice thing about our supplier is if there's ever a certain, weird mixture popping up, we can always go back to them to make sure that the chemistry is going to work. Just, in case whatever, you have a certain chemical that wouldn't normally be there, is it going to eat up the carbon? And if so, they're always there to help us out. But the vast majority of this stuff, we have a lot of experience in. And, the nice thing is as of now, we haven't failed at it. So everything that we've tried to filter, we've been successful. And so, we're just saying, hey, whatever you've got, let us develop a solution. Let us do some bench testing on it, and we'll know if it's going to work or not.
So how are you guys handling the contaminated filter media at the conclusion of a project? It's like, okay, we've got this material. It's essentially a waste now. How are we handling that? And how do you work with your customers in that under those circumstances?
That goes back similar to if we were renting a roll-off box. We can provide the system, the expertise in setting up something that's going to be efficient. It's going to work. But at the end of the day, when the project's over, it is the client's responsibility to dispose of and clean up the equipment. Again, we have so many relationships, so many people that we can point you in the right direction and help you out on that. It's just we are not going to be the ones doing it. And the big part of that is we don't want to compete with our customers. A lot of our customers already know that they're going to clean those out, or they already work with other contractors that can do that work. And we don't want to take that work away from them.
Yeah. And then, disposing of the waste piece too, you make the client handle that part of it too, right? So, it's clear when they rent the tank, it's like, that's not part of your job, or you're not extending your services to that area of the bit, of the project.
Right. We're very good at what we're good at. We don't want to stretch ourselves too thin.
Right. No, that makes sense. I got it. Okay. That's good to know. Talk a little bit about one of the services I've seen you guys advertise on a little bit is bypass water management. That seems to be, kind of it sounds like a really nice fit for the type of work you do and a valued service for certain customers.
Yeah. I'll touch base on why we're adding it, and then Jesse can talk about the equipment we've added in the last year and what those capabilities are. But obviously we have pumps. We added those to support our environmental contractors when they needed to get water from somewhere into our tanks. And it just made sense. The next thing is to support bypass pumping, especially as more funds are released, governmental funds. There's a lot of improvement going on in wastewater, stormwater, and even water infrastructure. So recently we added, and Jesse can touch base more on what it means, but HDPE capabilities. And we fuse those. We can do that ourselves as far as on-site fusion. So big benefit to have all that equipment in-house.
Yeah. So with HDPE, it's not new, but it's been around for, many years. It's really started to break into the rental market. And the reason is that it's cut to order. You can fuse it in any orientation. Like most things that are fused, the weld is stronger than the pipe itself. So you're looking at leak proof, abrasion resistant, chemical resistant. You can leave it out in the sun. The elements don't affect it. I mean, this stuff at this point, they're saying that it can be in continuous use for 50 years. Plus, wow. That's just because that's how long it's been around. It might be longer. So, this stuff, I mean, it's great. And so we have it anywhere from 2-inch to 18-inch in stock. And then over that, we can get it and we would still rent it out. We'd still fuse it. One of the other benefits is we use a data logger. So especially on some of these big government jobs where they need hard proof that it's done right, every single fuse is logged, and then we can provide that it was, you hit that correct melt time, the correct cooling time, all of your correct pressures for each and every fusion. So that's nice to have as well.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could think of tons of good uses for that. I mean, I play a little bit of golf. Some of the fans may know, and I was playing on a golf course the other day, and there's a nice little pond on the third hole. It needs to be dredged, and the problem will be, the creek's running through, and they're going to need to bypass that water to actually dredge the pond. So there's one great example of just doing a little bypass pumping, right?
Yeah. Well, hey, and all of our pumps can handle up to 3-inch solids, so they'll shoot those golf balls out, no problem.
and the algae.
Yeah, there you go.
You could have a little bag filter over there catching all those extra balls too. I'm sure you could sell those. But and then you've got a lot of sewer systems that are trying to, have some, infrastructure changes. Like, the infrastructure bill is putting a lot of money out, for a lot of the communities now to upgrade their infrastructure. And I got to imagine there's going to be tons of opportunities to provide bypass, pump filter, bypass water management services to a lot of these communities looking to address those types of, upgrades to their system.
Oh yeah, we're out quoting a dozen of those every week.
Yep.
So it's just that's one of the areas that our company's really grown into the CIPP or reconstruction on all of those systems. A lot of money has been put at that. And it's not that we don't use hose. Some of the shorter jobs, we've kind of, what we do is every job we do a pricing analysis. Is it more economical to use, rigid hose in this job, or should we go ahead and use HDPE? If they're moving the pump all the time, maybe doing short sections at a time, they might want a hose anyways. So we're always going to do that. But and that's another thing, we've gotten really expanded our large diameter pumps up to 16-inch. We have a couple of 16-inch silent pumps coming in here in November. So, and then everything below that. So 3, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, silent capable on just about every pump we have. And
so that just helps what does that just help the noise, from like a residential scenario where they're not constantly hearing a lot of, loud pumping from the bypass pumping?
Right. You don't want to be woke up in the middle of the night, right? So these a lot of the times what's going on is they might have to bypass 24 hours a day for, a week straight or several months, however long it goes. And that pump might be sitting right outside somebody's bedroom window. The nice thing is that pump could be running right outside my window and you wouldn't hear it as we're having this conversation. So they're all rated for 63 decibels or less. And that's a government spec. You're going to see that all over a lot of specifications, and it's the exact same pump. It just has in a sound attenuated box. It's also padlockable. So if you're in a dangerous neighborhood where maybe you don't want someone to, come in, it doesn't have to be dangerous. Let's say a curious neighborhood that maybe they don't want that pump running. They want to come flip it off. You can throw a padlock on there to.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, let's do a little quick diversion here a bit. Let's talk a little bit about sustainability and where is E-Tank landing, its approach to delivering sustainable solutions for customers. Have you guys thought through that? Have you started to, strategize in that area of maybe your fleet or the types of equipment you're using, things like that? What are you guys doing in that space?
Yeah, I can jump on that. So sustainability goals it's kind of ingrained in what we do as a company, just because of how involved we are in environmental remediation. We are moving towards everything we buy is Tier 4 plus. A lot of the pumps are actually starting to move into Tier 5, so we're lowering emissions there. And different types of movements like that, being economic and efficient with your logistical movements, things of that nature as well.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I mean, I'm sure, I'm sure it's a bit of a challenge to completely be, zero emission, things like that. But I'm just curious how companies, like you all would be evaluating your sustainability impact into the environment with what you're doing. So I thought I would just ask that question.
Sure.
Well, look, this has been a pretty good interview. I'm curious, if people wanted to know how to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you guys?
Yeah. Well, You try not to get a hold of Jesse. That's my job, is to bother him after hours. So really, if you're in Indiana and Southwest Ohio, you call me or email me. My email is amorris@etank.net. My phone number is 317-670-0021. If you're just curious who you need to talk to because you're not in those areas, you can call me, email me, and I can point you in the right direction. Or you can get on our website, etank.net. Bottom of the front page has got all of our regional account managers, my counterparts in our different areas.
That's great. That's good to hear. And just for the listeners, we'll put a link to Jesse and Andrew's contact information on the podcast episode. You can at least reach out to them at some point down the road if you're interested. Guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show, talk a little bit about eTank and all the value that you're providing industry and the capabilities you guys offer, and really appreciate that getting with us and being a huge sponsor of the podcast. I really appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having us, Sean.
You bet. Thanks a lot. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks.
See ya.